And now for Christopher's score. I mean, that was just so fun. Yeah, I mean, it's so different from most of the other entries, and I just really love the humor here. Okay, so what we need to do though is kind of think about what's possible for these instruments. Okay, before we talk about the scoring and everything else. All right, so the first thing is these long slurs, right? So these are like the piano kind of slurs. So you got to do some reading of some of my stuff in the 100 orchestration tips, 100 more orchestration tips books about slurring, versus like breathing versus bowing and so on and so forth. So yes, technically speaking, wind players could cover very, very long distances all in one breath. But that's basically what you're saying, right? When you put a very, very long slur over a passage like this, is you're saying that all of these notes should be played in one breath with no articulation, right? And it really weakens the line, right? So, you're basically saying da da, right? It's like there's no attack anywhere, right? And then the same thing is like this stuff is just like for celesta it's fine, right? But for string players, it really is a long way to go without changing the bow, right? So every time you put a slur over something, that is how long the bow goes before changing direction, right? So this really needed to be thought out a lot better in terms of the slurs. Okay, so that's point number one. All right. And then point number two, like you can't put a slur over a long line of pizzicato like this, right? Because it doesn't make any sense. Like when you slur pizzicato, that means that the finger, like you pluck at the beginning of it, and then the finger changes position without plucking again, right? But whenever you do that, you can barely hear the second note. You will not hear the third note at all, right? So there shouldn't be a slur over this. Okay, so that's really like the main thing that kind of stands out. So let's talk about the scoring a little bit. And starting off here, like there's a really reedy sound, like a reed organ sound. If you've ever seen those little things that little boxes before we had Casios. We would plug these little keyboards into the wall, and there was a little air motor, and then it would activate it was just basically like a melodeon, but with a just plug it into the wall for the air passage rather than breathing through. Okay. All right, so that's what this really, really sounds like. And the reason why is because you've got this massive unison of all of these wind instruments. So you've got flute plus oboe. So you're starting off with mezzo forte, okay, and the oboes. I'm guessing that this is A2 or maybe one oboe. I don't know, but anyways, whether it's one or two, that will drown out whatever's going on with the flutes until you get to right around here, right? So like the flute is a much weaker instrument in its lower register than the oboe. Right? So unless you're balancing them, like if you mark the oboe piano and the flute mezzo forte, then you would get a balance. But even at that, it wouldn't be that great because the flute is kind of breathy. It has a really different character from the oboe in its lowest register. All right. And then sort of like it has all of these gymnastics. It just really feels like gymnastics because of the long slur. Okay, and then at this point you have the piccolo take over on the melodic arc, and then you have the flutes and oboes jump back down, and once again the flute is very weak down here on this low E. The B and the E are not going to be all that resonant, and then you throw in some English horn as well. So like you just have this massive reedy sound right in here, which we could hear. And if that weren't enough, you're also adding some horn down there, which jumps down the octave finally at the end. All right. So that is just really, that big stack is not going to be all that elegant. Yeah, so if I hope that you've heard, if you've listened to some of the comments that I made before about dynamic mixing and about balance and so forth, this could all be piano, right? The whole introduction could be piano with a surge in the middle. I think it's interesting that you don't really say what dynamic the first horn is here, right? So, but then you end piano. So, like, everybody sort of needs to work out how their balance is going to go, right? So, if this is mezzo forte, crescendo, and you wanted this balanced, I would say start off with the piano, right? And then end pianissimo, with these guys ending piano. Anyways, that's just the way that I would do it. Now, this is really, really fun. You had, like, horns. You just had a total brass jamboree right in here. And that was really unexpected and very, very fun. Actually, pretty good scoring, like, in terms of, like, the slurs. So you should have just taken that approach here, right? Why do this approach here, which is really, really nice, and not the same thing there, right? I mean, because maybe perhaps you're just copying what the slurs and ties are in the piano part, but you do not have to be tied down to what the piano does, right? And now we've got this, yeah, bump, 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 da. Okay, that's real fun. I would say slur this bottom one, right? So that they're all the same length, right? They're all the same breadth. Yeah, so it's just really, really fun. And yeah, so there were some problems with the harmony. Just like, I mean, you're doing a different harmonic approach really from what the piano part is written, but like right in here, I sort of felt like maybe you had misinterpreted the chord and you weren't quite sure where to go, and so you added a couple of notes or something like that, or to kind of to follow through with your own harmonic idea. But just be aware. You know, the Lili is going towards a certain chord so that she can resolve out of it, right? So she's stacking a 4 on top of a 5. That's like that actually became a big traditional thing to do in pop music in the 70s. And then resolving to the 5, and then she's setting everything up to go back to the 1, right, in our expectations. So just watch out for that, right? Try to incorporate some of those harmonies if you can, all right? All right, so anyway, so we have this big old stack of stuff going on here. The overtones, like you marked up the celesta, mezzo forte in an attempt to hear it, but the honest truth is you cannot put this huge amount of overtones in music and then expect the celesta to come through, because it'll just get buried. Like all of those bright sounds that are hovering above these pitches in the winds especially, and strings, and you know, wow, you know, you're going all the way up to a written F sharp in our horns. I guess that's, I'm just taking a quick look at this. Yeah, see, so your horns are actually your horns are actually concert pitch, sorry. And like this F sharp is actually not possible, right? Because the highest note on a standard concert horn is F, right? So yeah, so that and to have these high pitches played piano at all would really be a stretch. It would just really be hard on the player. Okay, well, all that aside, now this top line should be trumpet anyway, right? You get up to a certain point, it's really a trumpet kind of a sound. All right, but back to what I was talking about. If you have these really high, bright tones in the winds and strings and brass, then it just really cancels out what the celesta is possible. You know, what's possible for celesta, because celesta has got a fixed dynamic level, right? It cannot sound above. Like it you cannot really get it to play mezzo forte or anything. There have even been some great works for celesta where like they don't even bother, the composer doesn't even bother to write down a dynamic level because it doesn't really matter. You know, or much of a dynamic level. Okay, so yeah, so I would just say really try not to do so much intense doubling on some of this kind of scoring, right? Just see, like, don't just stack everybody in a nice jolly stack, right? Just try to have certain colors come out and double others, but not triple and quadruple, all right? That would be my short way of analyzing this. I like the fact that you've got these guys in octaves, right, on the outside. That's cool. Okay. So you don't, if you've got those octaves going on, you do not need to further stack this octave with the clarinet, right? So what if the clarinets played the pitches in the middle, right? And then the bass clarinet and English horn played the other median pitches, right, below, right? So because you've got some of that going on in here, you've got the violins sort of playing those harmonizing notes inside the melody, right, which is given to the viola. So like if you had the first violin doubling the flute on top, then you would get like a more you get a smoother sound, right? But by taking that away, it really is all about the flutes and these sky high French horns, which it just is really not a thing. Okay, so this high F sharp. So anyways, that is as much time as I can give you today. But very, very cool, Christopher. I feel like you should sit down with an orchestration teacher for like an hour, and like you would come out with something that was really polished. And I mean the ideas behind all of this scoring are very, very cool, and could end up being something very sophisticated. Just despite the fact that that there is a lot of polish that you need to add to this to make it really work, right? Okay, so thank you so much for sharing this. It's very, very fun, the way that you changed things around and came up with interesting shortcuts and everything else.